Hey guys, this is Tyler. This is the second part of my video I did on Chile and why it's going to continue to be the forefront of MGTOWism in South America. Okay, so Chile was a country I had lived in. I'd spent time in for a few years. I was a student and I also worked down there, and overall it was a really cool experience. At the same time, I also did make some realizations about the country as a whole, both the positives and negatives, and I try to put both things in perspective here just so everyone is clear. I still have very good friends and contacts in Chile right now, and I want to make everyone aware of that. In terms of where the MGTOW movement's going, as I said before, I think the future of MGTOW is among the younger generation there. There's no question that Generation Z and the latter part of Generation Y was definitely where the most amount of MGTOW type of guys I encountered were. In fact, if we go back in time to around 2013, 2014, I remember one time when I was at a bar. I was at an establishment and I was having a few drinks with a friend of mine, or a couple friends, and I actually encountered a guy and we had a conversation. He was from Chile. At the time, a lot of his ideals on life and his perspective on relationships and dating were very MGTOW-like, and I'm not certain if he knew about the concept. He may have, but he certainly would have aligned with that type of cause. And he also had spent time in Canada. I think he lived there for 2 years. He was studying in high school in Canada, so it's interesting. That was one guy that I still recall to this day. There were a few other guys too I encountered similar, not so as much to the same degree as that guy, but where they also did have ideologies that would have been very MGTOW-like. It was really interesting when I was down there. I didn't really make a lot of these realizations, but it was clear as day when I think about it now. But in continuation of previous video, what I saw when I was in Chile is just a general level of dissatisfaction among men in terms of the dating, and many of the men were very much desiring something outside, and that outside is out in a foreign country or living somewhere or meeting a foreign girl that was in the country. Many of these guys, so what they stated was often on the lines of having to put in so much work, who had been in relationships in Chile and getting very little out of it. Now, I thought that exceptionally the case with Canadians, Americans, but these guys were telling me that two of them in particular, they had actually had relationships with North Americans, and they said that it was actually worse with the Chilean girls. I don't know if this is a cross-cultural thing where there were kind of standard differences that the North American ladies had compared to the Chilean ladies. I'm not sure on that now, but it was interesting, that observation. Case in point though is that many of these younger guys are really tired of it down there. One of the other factors though going against Chile, and why I believe that Chile will continue to become the forefront with MGTOWism, is just their overall economy. It's really bad. We look over to Argentina, and Argentina has also overall a terrible economy for the average person, but many of the guys are actually very satisfied in the dating scene. Argentines, they live very economically, they're pretty poor, but their personal lives are actually very enjoyable and pleasant. If you guys have ever met an Argentinian person, you'll notice that if you go to Argentina, I would highly recommend when people can to travel to Argentina, take a vacation. It's an awesome place. It's really fun. There's so much to do there, and the prices and everything are really good and reasonable. There's great cuisine and wine and places to see and do, and people also are really fun to be around. That's always my experience. I lived in Argentina for a brief time, and I traveled there probably on 12 or 14 different occasions. I'd like to in Argentina also. In Chile though, the economy there is building up to this current crisis that we had. It was already pretty bad like a year and a half ago. Their currency was also devaluing quite a bit. They've just had kind of a succession of 3 or 4 bad years now, and so for the men there, they're dealing with both a really bad economy, as they have been, and then also a bad dating scene. Whereas like in Argentina, many of the guys are at least somewhat satisfied, but they have a bad economy. Whereas in Chile, they have both, and that's made it really troublesome and depressing, I think, for many of the men there, and why many of them have opted kind of just to go this MGTOW lifestyle. Other thing in Chile is that I think many of the men there are more that in this temporary MGTOW mindset where they're just trying to get like a little ahead in their life in Chile, perhaps then leave the country and live somewhere else, and then kind of pursue what they're really going after, or they're trying to get far enough ahead in Chile and then perhaps like kind of branch into a more long-term relationship or something. Time remains to be seen on that, but I think in Chile it's a little more mixed there. But the economy is really working against a lot of guys there, and it's really a big problem. So many of these guys, we also saw that there was a recent protest, massive protests like a year ago, and there was all sorts of rights activists, and this was a big deal in Santiago like a year ago, and that kind of puts in perspective the overall kind of gender war that's going on, you might say. And there's just a lot of issues, I think, that have also been influenced through other countries, and like America and Europe, and they've just kind of copied or emulated some of the same things that they see abroad. One thing I do still like, though, I appreciate a lot about the MGTOW set in Chile, is that it's still very positive. This is something you'll find often, like in Latino culture, is it's a very positive kind of culture. It's like, even if guys do have this mode of thinking, they still go about day-to-day life in a positive way. They still enjoy themselves, and they still can have a good time. And I think that's one of the reasons why MGTOWism is so compatible in South America, is because the overall vibe down there is just positive and more cheerful. And this just makes it easier, honestly, going about this type of lifestyle, because it's important that you still want to enjoy life. And that's one of the, I think, biggest misconceptions with MGTOWism, that, oh, like, these guys don't enjoy life, they don't like this and they don't like that person. But this is far from the case. I mean, some of the most positive and bright guys I've met were actually identified with this mindset. And as we know here, some guys actually still pursue kind of short-term relationships and are still plenty happy, honestly, in their day-to-day life. This is such a myth, honestly, when people identify these guys as being really unhappy. It's far from it. One other aspect, or a couple that we see also that helps in Chile with this MGTOW movement, is the MRAs aren't too big down there. And I don't think domestic PUAs per se are a big thing, but especially the MRAs. These type of guys, obviously, sometimes they work in conjunction with MGTOWism, but other times they don't. They kind of put down MGTOWism, but MRAs aren't really as big of a thing, honestly, in Chile or Argentina. There's kind of some of the more macho type culture in Chile, but it's not to the level of MRA. And I think this also helps kind of further the MGTOW cause, or the MGTOW mentality, because guys don't get too concerned about a certain ideology per se as just living a certain way. That's kind of the gist of it there. On a different note, though, I do believe that the MGTOWism in Chile could actually help further the adjustment, you might say, to the overall dating culture, and just for the overall trend to improve in the next 10 years. Because if many more guys opt to kind of pursue this MGTOW way, and they don't put like relationships and dating on a pedestal, you could definitely see that the mindset shift among women could be quite drastic, because it could go back to more of a school system where they're not being pursued as much. And certainly, if the overall economies don't improve very much in the next few years, this would likely put so much weight on the system that people wouldn't really have a choice. Many women would have to go for provider guys, and they would have to find and respect guys that could take care of them and give them a sense of stability. Because that's, I think, another big component here, is that whether we're looking at Chile or Argentina, the stability of a nation, it very much ties into how much the MGTOWism progresses. Typically in countries, as they become more and more unstable, the MGTOW style usually isn't as popular. We see this in countries like Ukraine and Russia. MGTOWism is certainly a known concept in Russia, but it's not at all mainstream. And I think a lot of this is due to the instability of their country. It's not really compatible with their day-to-day life, you might say. Because that's another key thing here, is that if the overall lifestyle and the way that people live, if it's fashioned in such a way that it doesn't really fall into line with MGTOWism, people probably aren't really going to pursue it. Most guys aren't going to pursue it. Whereas if the lifestyle, like if people are spending most of their time indoors, online, doing everything kind of individual, that's going to be much more compatible with a MGTOW lifestyle than a life that's the opposite of this. And that's kind of my observation on this here. And this is actually the same reason why when we look at a lot of the Latino culture, Chilean culture actually is probably a little more online focused than other South American countries. Even still, Latino culture is very social, it's very personable, face to face. For this reason, I think MGTOWism would have its limitations in Chile, and perhaps certain types of MGTOWism could become a thing there, but with limitations, because a country or people that are naturally more extroverted, more preferring face-to-face interactions, are probably going to naturally lean away from this lifestyle. But at the moment, it's difficult to say with where everything is at. Now, if the country though does become more focused online, more introverted, or where people spend more time indoors, as we see in countries like Estonia, then yes, it would certainly naturally take off better, and it would definitely become much more mainstream like it's became in Canada and America. But that's my take here, and like I tell everyone, just go out and have a good time and be comfortable however you choose to live. So give me your feedback below, and thank you.